Welcome to DFC on the Green. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Chris Etherington, taking a look at the Valspar Championship on DraftKings. This isn't my neck of the woods down here. Plays about 30 minutes away from me. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it, but I guess I can be on weather alert here.
Yeah, we were just talking about it. It does look like that Thursday morning tee times will have a slight advantage with the winds being a little down than the afternoon. And then Friday, it looks like it's about to be even with the winds for both sides. It might be slightly down in the afternoon. So with that in mind, I think stacking a couple lineups with the morning tee times to there's Thursday morning tee times to Friday afternoon tee times might give you an advantage this week.
Yeah, good note there. Coming off last week, a very entertaining tournament. We had obviously Mickelson in the playoff, and that was a great finish. I was kind of hoping he'd wrap it up in regulation. I was hoping for a walk-off there on 18th. That would have been nice, but obviously lefty was due. We talked about him last week. His stats were just way too solid, playing way too well. Finally came away with a win. Mickelson obviously not playing this week. Is now the time to jump off Mickelson that he got his win?
I don't know just yet. It was funny last week how we did, like you said, we did mention that it was funny that back at the Waste Management that he was told that he could be outside of top 50 for the first time since 96. Ever since then, he's been on form, and now I believe he's in the top 20 in the official World Golf Rankings after his win yesterday. So, I mean, the guy says that he's going to achieve 50 wins by the time he's done. So, I don't know it's time to go off of him just yet. He might win a couple more times this year. But as far as his play last week, I mean, I was really excited. The putt that he made on 16, and then the tee shot that he hit on 17 in the playoff was pretty much almost a sure thing that it might be ended on that hole. And yeah, it was just an exciting tournament to watch down the stretch.
And heading into this week, it's a decent field. You know, we have Spieth, McIlroy, Sergio, Stenson, Rose. We obviously have Woods back this week. So a pretty entertaining field. As far as top-end guys go, you know, you and I were talking before the show. You know, we kind of expect Spieth to clean things up here a little bit. You know, he's been very close to kind of getting back to his elite self. Just needs to kind of clean up on the greens a little bit, and I think that's can happen this week. So I don't mind paying the 11.8 price tag for Spieth here. I think you and I are in agreement that kind of McIlroy is the only one that we're really off of in this top tier. But that, of course, that if you're playing a ton of lineups, you want to get some McIlroy exposure. You know, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah, exactly. If you're doing like, I would say 20 lineups or more, maybe put Rory in one or two, just because it is Rory. We all know what he can do. He could turn it on the on switch and just basically lap the field when he wants to. But as for me, I think I'm just going to fade him, and then I think Stenson is going to be a little popular with his price where it is, especially with his course history here, finishing 7th last year and then 4th back in 2015. It seems like he's going to be one of those guys where if he's popular, then you definitely need to fade him because something bad might happen. Like a WD or just a bad couple of rounds, and he'll miss the cut. It's kind of like Paul Casey or Webb Simpson. If they get popular, all of a sudden they just don't play well. So I think I'm just going to fade Stenson this week.
Yeah, I don't mind, kind of going off of him. Like, I like Justin Rose at 10K. He's a guy that you can generally get at kind of lower ownership, and I think obviously out of Spieth, Garcia, Stenson, Rose. Like, I think Rose will come in a little bit under owned, especially with a decent 9K field like Paul Casey at 9,800. Mr. Consistent. Like, what you're going to get out of him. People will go him over Rose. So I think Rose is an interesting play this week. I think I guess you could call him a dark horse to win just because I don't think anyone's going to really talk about him all that much.
Right. And that seems to be the case for him almost every week that he plays, that he doesn't seem to get over that 20% ownership mark. For some reason, people just don't want to play him. I mean, when you look at his recent play, I mean, outside of last week, I mean, you've had like 2 top 10s entering the WGC, and then he won the WGC HSBC championship. Like, I think it was back in October, November last year. So, I mean, and during that stretch on the European tour, he was on point. He was just racking up top 10s. So if you look at his stats, I mean, he's first in strokes gained per 4 scoring. He's third in birdie or better percentage. So I think at 10,000, you're definitely getting a discount. And like you said, with Stenson there, with Paul Casey right there around him, he could be overlooked. And I think he could be around that 15% mark, maybe a bit less.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, kind of moving down into this range, I don't want to talk too much about Paul Casey just because I feel like it's kind of the same thing every week. You know what you're going to get out of him. Solid player here, 9,800, decent cash game guy. Wouldn't be surprised to see a top 20 out of him here this week. Do I like the price? It's a little bit up from what we've been kind of paying. Obviously, I think because the field, it's a little bit more limited. He's 9,800, but I don't mind paying him. I think I prefer Casey out of that entire 9K range, and then probably Woodland second for me.
Yeah, in this range, I mean, I totally agree with Casey. I think he's actually priced maybe right. Is going to make people think on actually playing him, but he's been, I mean, on form all season long. Like, just the streak of the top 20s is basically there still. So if you look at his stats, I mean, he's in the top 10 in the field in 3 of the stats that I'm looking at this week. But I think, like I said earlier, I think Casey's going to be a little too popular for my liking, so I'm just going to fade him. I know you and I talked about Woods off air and about his price. For me, it doesn't really matter what price Woods is. I'm just going to play him in a couple lineups. Don't even think about it. Just put him in. The way he played at the Honda was very promising, and then it is crazy to think that he could win within the next month or so. He is that close. But at 9,500, I think that's a fair price for where he is in the odds, and also on DraftKings. Just like Casey, is going to make people think whether to play him or not. As far as I'm concerned, I don't really care. I'm just going to play him in a couple lineups and just move on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind getting exposure. Like, if you want to be, on the Woods, potential top 10, top 5 here, like there's definitely potential this week. Like you said, the price 9,500, it's pretty fair for, I think, his odds and play this week. I just don't like it. I just don't like paying 9,500 for Woods. I think when I look at this range, like I'm not a huge Tony Finau guy this week. I usually don't mind him. I kind of think we see the same thing out of him where, he plays well, but just doesn't get over the hump. I think when you look, I think Woodland and Hadwin are interesting options, just a little bit cheaper. And same thing with Brendan Grace, 8,600. I think he's my favorite guy kind of out of this 85 to 9,500 range. I think Grace can actually really contend and possibly win this week.
Yeah, it was a little tilting, especially after Thursday, picking Grace over Louis when Louis had that awesome round on Thursday. When you look at Grace, I mean, it's basically the same thing as last week. The stats are basically the top third, or at least the top half of the field. Nothing really stands out. I mean, he's 36 in the field for birdie or better percentage. And then when you look at his course history here, I mean, he didn't play here last year, but he finished in tied for 37th in 2016. So, I mean, at 8,600 for Grace, I say that's reasonable. For ownership wise, I could see like 13-15% on him. He didn't really kill your lineups last week, but overall, I think where he is, like with Webb Simpson being there, with Adam Hadwin, Gary Woodland just above him, I think Grace should be around that, like I said, that 13-15% mark, and I think he's a good tournament option for this week.
What do you think of guys like Webb Simpson? Like, speaking of guys that didn't kill your lineup, but actually someone who did is Matt Kuchar, 8,200. You know, he was 7,600 last week. I liked him. I didn't like him much come halfway through Thursday. He was just awful off the bat. 8,200 this week to Kuchar. Like, do you like any of these guys in this range here?
I mean, just to elaborate on Kuchar a little bit, I mean, last year he was so consistent on racking up top tens, and then this year it's not so consistent as it was towards like in the summer last year and towards the end of last year. Yeah, last week was just funny with Kuchar on how he played. It was not his normal style of golf. He was just not hitting it well at all. And I mean, that happens. But to go back to him for this week, I think is a good tournament play just because he was averaged well over 20% owned across the board last week. And so he screwed a lot of people's lineups the way he played on Sunday. With his course history here, I think he could be that good GPP play, maybe a fringe or like a very close cash play this week. I think at 8,200, that's a fine price for him.
I think like Kuchar and Louis and Na like are all interesting GPP plays because they're smashed in between. You know, let's jump into Cameron Smith right now because I think that's kind of where we're heading. Like he's going to be an uber popular play this week.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw him up here and it was almost like a no-brainer at 8,000 just to start with him in your cash lineup and then just work your way around him. I mean, he's played here the last 2 years. He's made the cut. Nothing special, a couple top 50s. But when you look at his stats, though, I mean, he's 8th in the field for strokes gained par 5 scoring. He's actually 10th in the field for par 4 scoring as well. And then if you look at proximity, he's 11th. So, I mean, people are going to see that. They're going to look at his recent play. And at 8,000, I think that's whether that's value or not. Sure, I think he's probably like 500 or 600 cheaper than what he should be at. So for that reason, I think a lot of people are going to basically go to him, and then that could mean that Kevin Na and Louis could be overlooked. I mean, if you look at Louis, he finished T7 here back in 2016. Kind of like Paul Casey, and it says you know what you're going to get out of Louis. So I think he's going to be that perfect pivot option away from Cameron Smith if you want to be different in this range.
As far as other guys go, Reeves had a couple of disastrous tournaments over the last two. 7,900. You got Patrick Reed, Duffner, 78, 7,700. Zach Johnson. Do you like any of these names in this range? Like, it's some decent name value here, but just some guys that have kind of not been playing all that well lately.
Yeah, I mean, nothing excites me for these guys. I mean, if you look at Duffner, for example, I mean, he's just not making birdies. He's basically near the bottom of the field for birdie or better percentage. I mean, his only good stat that he's actually hit decently close to the pin. He's 26th in the field for proximity. He has really good course history here, and I think that's going to be the number one reason that people will go to him. As far as the other guys, I think Patrick Reed, something's just off with him. I don't know what the deal is. It seems that ever since that Ryder Cup match they had with McIlroy, it's still bothering him a little bit. But yeah, it's just a lot of good names here, but it's just nothing too exciting for my liking.
Yeah, like I don't mind, like a Zach Johnson at 7,700, fairly stable option. But like outside of that, like it's not too thrilling. Like we're gonna jump down, like Kevin Streelman here at 7,500. He's gonna be another popular play this week, but I think deservingly so.
Yeah, when you look at Streelman's history here, I mean, he won here back in 2013. He finished top 20 here last year. He only has the one missed cut in the last 5 years. At 7,500, I think that's a fair price, maybe a little too cheap. But I mean, people are just going to play him just because of his course history, I think, and also his consistent play as of late. The one guy that I really like, that for some reason I just have a gut feeling that he's going to play well, I don't normally play him, is Bryson DeChambeau. I mean, if you look at his stats, he's first in the field for par 5 scoring. He's 13th in the field for birdie or better percentage. I mean, it's a little scary, but he finished T27 here last year. So I think that 7,400 is good value on Bryson, and I think he might. I'm not sure if he's going to be overlooked or not, but I think with Streelman being right there, I think Bryson might be a good pivot option away from Streelman.
Yeah, I don't mind it. And you're also looking at Chesson Hadley, who's 7,400 too.
Yeah, he was very popular at the Honda, and he just shit the bed basically and missed the cut completely. But the way that Honda was playing with the high winds and how difficult it was, I'm just going to throw that out the window. I mean, his stats are still good. So, and if you look at his course history here, I mean, between 2014 2016, he's made all 3 cuts. He finished T14 back in 2014. So with that in mind, I don't mind going back to Chesson with a potential lower ownership, because people might still have a sour taste in their mouth with him back at the Honda.
As far as other guys in the low sevens, we saw Kyle Stanley. He withdrew from this week, so don't put him in. We should obviously see his name be removed here shortly, or with the out sign. But in that same range, you took a look at Bud Cauley, 7,200. You got him in the GPP section for this week.
Yeah, I think down here the ownership is going to be slightly spread out. There's just a lot of names that people like to play here. And I mean, with Cauley playing here last year, making the cut seems a little safer for me, especially in tournaments. And then if you look at his stats, I mean, he's 19th in the field for proximity. He's 27th in the field for ball striking. So with that in mind, I think he'll probably be around that 10, maybe 11% ownership. Just because people do know the name. And I think with his recent play and with them looking at his stats, I think that's going to be where his ownership's going to be at. And that's going to be okay for me for tournaments. I think he has that upside of basically finishing in the top 15. And down here at 7,200, that's a really good value. All you need from the guy is basically to make the cut, and that's it.
And then you dig even further. You're going below 7K this week. Aaron Wise, 6,900. What do you like about him here?
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Wise is basically your totally up and down player, and that's basically just a GPP flyer type of golfer that you're looking for that has that upside of a top 15 finish. But it seems that this year that's pretty much all you're basically looking for Aaron Wise. He'll either miss a cut or he'll finish in the top 20. So down here, I mean, it's basically hit or miss with some of the guys, but I think Wise will continue his good play from the Honda. He finished 33rd at the Honda, so from that, yeah, I kind of like Aaron Wise at the bottom here.
Yeah, I like that call. And, you mentioned when you're talking about Cauley, like some other guys here, Austin Cook, Chris Kirk might gain a little bit of ownership in that range as well, which could obviously suck away from Cauley.
Yeah, those guys and also like CT Pan as well. He's becoming a little more popular as of late. Same with like Stuart Sink, Brendan Harkins, even Sam Saunders. All these guys are going to be somewhat a little bit more popular just because people know the name. They don't know too many of the rookies yet. So I think with that in mind, I like to go a little bit more cheaper than those guys and see if I can find that basically the diamond in the rough pretty much. And hopefully Wise will make the cut and have that top 20 finish.
I like it. Who do you got win this week? Don't say Tiger Woods, please.
Well, I mean, like I said in my article, I just have a gut feeling that Bryson DeChambeau, the way he's been playing as of late, with his stats as good as they are, outside the big guys, obviously, like if I'm not picking Spieth, I'm going to pick Bryson for this week.
Yeah, I like that call. I used to think out of the top guys, I think Spieth ends up with the win this week. If I'm not picking Spieth, I think Brendan Grace is my guy.
Yeah, that'll be a nice turnaround from last week for sure.
So that's going to wrap it up for us. You can go to dailyfantasycafe.com. You can check out Chris's GPP and cash game article for this week. Keep an eye on weather. I know you'll be tweeting out stuff, tweeting out groups and stuff. Be sure to give Chris a follow as well. And we'll see you guys next week.